Greetings! I am the cartoon hero because with great nostalgia comes great responsibility. The subject of fan service is definitely a hot topic, and there are more than enough people that justifiably chastise its existence. But, amazingly, some reviewers have done a decent job pointing out when the use of it in a show can work, or at least be accepted. For example, such use in High School of the Dead is tolerable because of the drama and character development of the story. And of course, Bennett the Sage pointed out that it works in New Cutie Honey because the action is fun and main character is a likable protagonist. I guess the main point is that you can get away with fan service if it's clear that TNA is secondary to plot and characterization done well. But is it possible to write a decent story in a series whose genre was created to be nothing but fan service? Well, maybe no man could do such a thing, but as the creator of today's subject might say,
I am no man.
Sekirei is the creation of Sakurako Gokurakuin, who has a history of creating yaoi manga like sensitive pornograph. The Sekirei manga debuted in Square Enix's Young Gangen magazine in 2004. It was made into an anime in 2008 by 7 Arcs and distributed by Aniplex, with Funimation handling US distribution by 2010. And so while High School of the Dead may have had elements of this, it's time to look at a true harem anime and see if anything decent can come out of it. This is Sekirei. We open our series on what looks like the set of SWAT 4 with a group of soldiers that are even worse marksmen than Star Wars stormtroopers. One woman, whose face is hidden, takes an infant in some type of lab while another one provides cover.
It's too bad for them you weren't here to stop me, so I ended up killing them all. Unfortunately, it was boring. Humans are far too weak. They're a truly unnecessary species.
Hell hath no fury indeed. We then cut to one of the most awesome opening numbers I've ever witnessed. Even without an English dub, the number is extremely catchy, while the animation sequence does a great job foreshadowing the action of the show and showing off all the primary characters. Actually, I've noticed there are a few magical girl action stories that have some pretty kick-ass and earwormy theme songs. Though the less said about Wedding Peach, the better. We then cut to the far distant future of 2020, where the capital city, that is apparently no longer Tokyo, is pretty much under the control of a major corporation called MBI. And yet they still can't make the hoverboards we're supposed to get by 2015. We are not pleased. It's here we meet Minato Sahashi, who has come to the city to attend university, but has now failed his entrance exam twice.
I've got no education and no job. If this keeps up, there's no way I'm ever gonna get a girlfriend either.
And before we can accuse this of just being a Love Hana ripoff, it takes a slight 180 from that series and has the girl run into the guy. Or rather, her ass runs into him.
I should have known that building was way too high to jump off of. Thank you very much. Watch out!
And it took 3 minutes for the first booby facial. How long before she bears them?
Thanks for loaning me your pajamas.
And yes, get used to seeing a lot of nosebleeds to indicate getting turned on. Really, Minato, you should see a doctor about that condition. This wet dream come true for 90% of the audience is Musubi, and she's being chased by these two vixens who appear to have stolen the powers of Megavolt from Darkwing Duck. And much of the pilot episode is Musubi running from them with Minato in tow until his attempt to protect her gets her so hot and bothered that she has to do this.
Oh no, she's done it!
Wow, so Huey Lewis was right. The power of love is tougher than diamonds and stronger than steel. Minato learns through MBI's head Minaka Hiroto that Musubi is part of the Sekirei plan, which involves 108 people, mostly female, who have superhuman abilities. These abilities come into full power when they are emerged through swapping DNA with a normal person, usually through kissing. The person who emerges a Sekirei then becomes known as their Ashikabi, basically their master. It's frequently stated that a Sekirei's strength increases the greater the bond with the Ashikabi becomes. Think about what that might entail. Yeah, you really got to admire their restraint and not flat out using that to turn this into a full-on hentai. The Sekirei's mission is to engage one another in combat until one can take away their abilities through a special incantation, though it's never really clear if this actually kills them or not. And as you probably guessed, much of the action in this series is your standard cheesecake fan service catfighting, right down to the girls getting their clothes destroyed whenever they battle, especially Musubi. It can possibly be hand-waved due to the fact they are using superpowers and thus their blows have more force. So what we basically have here is Pokemon mixed with Highlander turned into a magical girl harem anime. Did I mention this was created by a woman? After Minato gets kicked out of his apartment for harboring a girl in there, they literally leap across town, just go with it, to a boarding house called Maison Izumo, which we eventually learn is pretty much populated entirely by Sekirei. This includes Uzume and the male Kagari, also known as the Sekirei Homura, both of whom have pretty dark secrets related to the Sekirei plan. Also, the owner of the house, Mia, is ultimately revealed to be Sekirei number 1, and while she usually has a charming motherly demeanor, let's just say you don't want to cross her.
I thought there was a little too much noise coming from in here for everyone to actually be bathing. You do realize that sexual relations within Maison Izumo are strictly forbidden, don't you?
There's also another Sekirei named Matsu who hides in a secret room all the time, monitoring everything with a system the NSA would be jealous of. And not only is she drawn to Minato, well, if you thought Musubi liked coming on to him, let's just say Matsu doesn't know the meaning of the words cold shower.
Please satisfy my need and cool down this hot body with your DNA.
Yeah, the Maison Izumo bathhouse pretty much exists to provide an excuse for much of the nudie action to take place. And there's this constant running gag about Musubi wanting to wash Minato's back. Minato also meets Seo, the Ashikabi to the Lightning Girls Hikari and Hibiki, and even though they tried to destroy Musubi before she emerged, Seo tries to take Minato under his wing about being an Ashikabi. It turns out that an Ashikabi can have more than one Sekirei, and in fact, it's a strategy for one to obtain multiples and build a small army to increase their chances of winning. This leads to Minato looking to get more girls himself, though it's more to prevent them from being taken by other Ashikabi that might mistreat them. This is essentially how Minato comes off as a much more likable and less annoying male protagonist than someone like, say, Keitaro from Love Hana. Yes, he's a total spaz who's as resistant to Musubi's advances as Major Nelson was to Genie's, but it's really done in a way that I think people can relate. You can tell he truly cares for others and wants to help those who might be abused in the game, and that stands out over his flaws, the biggest of which is that he just lacks self-confidence. He's smart, but has just struggled under pressure his whole life, and thus views himself as a failure, which is why he can't fathom why so many beautiful women would have any interest in him. And it's pretty clear that Musubi and the others want to instill that confidence in him, rather than getting off berating and humiliating him like Naru. The show tones down the standard loser guy surrounded by hot women angle of a harem anime just enough to be enjoyable rather than irritating. There's something else I have to give props to for the show showing restraint in. The squick factor. Case in point, the resident Lolly, a plant-controlling Sekirei named Kusuno, who becomes part of Minato's group. But unlike his other Sekirei, who all want to ride his pony, Ku looks at Minato like an older brother for the most part. In fact, the show features almost all of the tropes one would think would be associated with this genre, but rewrites them so they actually work. Musubi is the ditz of the group, but she's dead serious in not just her devotion to Minato, but her desire to both protect him and make him proud as a fighter.
That was amazing. You're not hurt anywhere, are you?
No, I'm alright. And I protected my modesty.
I'm not so sure about that.
Matsu is totally the hot-to-trot one and is shameless about how much she wants to experiment with Minato, but at the same time, she's the one who more than anyone else tells Minato he needs to stop putting himself down.
I've told you before, you have a lot to be proud of, Minato. You're a great guy.
Thanks. That's very nice of you, Matsu. Ah, what are you doing?
Huh, you said to give you my dirty clothes.
I meant after you were done wearing them.
We also eventually meet Kazehana, a wind Sekirei who's a total lush and hopeless romantic who keeps drunkenly going on and on about love. But her voice actress does it so over the top that it's pretty comical.
Well, is it that precious? Two lovers hand in hand on the run. It's so sweet. Shut thy mouth at once. Calm down, Blondie. We're discussing matters of love.
Even the resident tsundere of the show, the water Sekirei Tsukumi, doesn't come off as completely unlikable. She does start off as a man-hating shrew who is determined to not become emerged because she doesn't want to be the property of an Ashikabi, which can make sense if she's seen how certain Ashikabi treat their girls. But once she sees the type of guy Minato is, she becomes willing to join his group, and once emerged, becomes totally possessive of him, going so far as to consider them married. Thus, this story now takes on a love triangle involving Minato, Musubi, and Tsukumi, with Matsu choosing to sit back and hopefully pick up the pieces in the end.
I am his only true wife. Mistress is what thou art called.
I'm his true wife, too.
But again, there actually is some depth to this. Despite both having feelings for Minato and harboring jealousy toward each other, Musubi and Tsukumi share respect for one another as warriors and agree that their mission for the moment is to work together in defending Minato and the rest of the group. All of this is likely why it becomes acceptable when the story takes the inevitable turn into debating whether or not the Sekirei plan and making these girls fight one another is right. It comes to a full head when we meet a couple where the Sekirei is very weak and thus her Ashikabi wants to get her out of the game because she has no fair chance, which means they not only have to get past MBI's military forces, but a group of vicious Sekirei called the Discipline Squad. Minato understands their plight and thus wants to help them, but it also creates tension between those Sekirei who still believe there is personal honor in fighting and winning regardless, particularly Tsukumi. Thus, by showing there are protagonists who like being part of this game and not fully condemning it, the show doesn't try to condemn the audience for enjoying the material it's presenting. Unlike some other things I could mention. For another comparison, look at the movie Bob's take on Sucker Punch and the hidden message he believes it has. If this had been done in the same veil as Sucker Punch, the representative for the audience likely would have been Minaka, the villain basically staging the whole Sekirei plan for his amusement, if not for more sinister means. Instead, that representative is clearly Minato, someone who may get a kick out of watching the girls rip their clothes off and fight, whether he wants to admit it or not, but he still cares for the girls as people. If anything, the girls and their desire to win, even if they're being used by the plan, is a plot point towards that additional goal of Minato finding confidence for himself. Suffice it to say, the first series ends with a resolution on the escape plot, but enough of a cliffhanger to carry over into the second series, Sekirei Pure Engagement. While I was disappointed that the series theme song was changed for this season to something a bit more saccharine, the season did continue the story pretty well, especially by giving more information into the other big Ashikabis in the area, including the ones the Discipline Squad works for. Minato's sister also becomes an Ashikabi, and one with quite a mean streak in her. Oh, and there's also an episode 0, whose main purpose seems to be turning the fan service up to 11. But ultimately, I'd say that's part of what drives Sekirei into being an enjoyable ride. The fact that it's self-aware. The show doesn't hide the fact that it's a fan service-laden harem anime and flat out revels in it. Hell, Funimation brazenly advertised the show on its website with the tagline, "Boobies for the win," and that's nothing compared to the description on the back of the DVD Blu-ray set. But yet, it still took the time to lay out interesting characters and a compelling storyline. There's really good dialogue and comedy, huge references to love and friendship that don't come off as diabetes-inducing, and it's like they took almost every anime stereotype and found out how to do them right. And maybe that's the advantage to having a woman creating it. Sakurako Gokurakuin is clearly a good writer who has no hang-ups about what a lot of male audiences might originally be drawn in by, and simply uses that toward getting said viewers to discover the story she had to tell. She certainly does a better job than most Americans have recently done in making mature animation. I'm the Cartoon Hero, and for some reason, I felt quite different during this review.